Hi YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at a Colt, and I think it's going to be one of the most important Colts that I show you. It's definitely one of my favorite Colts that I own. This is a Colt 1911. This was the original 1911. This particular gun was manufactured in 1918. And before we get into it a little bit further, so people don't freak out, I'm going to show you there's nothing in it. It is empty. 100% empty. So, John Moses Browning designed this gun in 1911, and the Army adopted it in 1911, and that's why on the side of it says model of 1911 U.S. Army. Now, the Army was using revolvers up until this point, and they wanted something that was a semi-automatic pistol, and they wanted it to be in .45 caliber. And John Moses Browning came up with this design. Colt bought the design, and they started producing this gun for the U.S. Army. Now, there was a few of them that submitted their weapons designs to the military, and this is the one that ultimately won. It's the same process that they go through now. I'm sure it's a little bit more primitive, but during the testing phases of this gun, this particular gun fired 6,000 consecutive rounds without one single malfunction. And you cannot tell me that anybody watching this video owns a gun that they can say they fired 6,000 consecutive rounds through it without ever having one malfunction. That's pretty phenomenal. So the Army decided to adopt it, and off to the races we went. Now, this is probably one of the most iconic pistol designs of all time. This is the reason why Gucci Glockers can have their Glocks, and all the race gun people can have their 1911s, and companies like Wilson Combat, Nighthawk, Ed Brown, and all that can produce their very expensive custom 1911s. This is the original 1911. Now, you can make the argument that if you have a 1911, if it's not a Colt, it's an imposter. And that's true to some extent, because Colt is the one that produced all the original 1911s. Now, their patent ran out, and all major companies now produce a 1911 because it's still a relevant gun to this day, and they know how much people appreciate and shoot these guns. These guns are known to have probably the best trigger of any pistol design on the market. Still, to this day, there's nothing gonna freaking beat a Colt 1911 or 1911 trigger. They're just superb in every single way. But we're going to talk about a few things about this gun and why I like it so much, and why I think everybody should like these things so much. Now, one of the questions I'm going to get is, how much is it worth? I do not know how much this gun's worth, and I do not care how much it's worth. I do not buy things or place my values on what the monetary value of something is. I guess you could say, if you wanted to put a monetary value on this thing, it's somewhere between a Taurus 9mm and Elvis Presley's Colt Python, somewhere in the middle. that'll give you a value of it. But folks, you shouldn't worry about just how much something's worth. If you're buying these things for monetary value and as investment things, you're buying it for the wrong reason. You need to buy other things. You need to see a financial advisor if you want to start investing in stuff. This isn't the way to go, but if somebody was to buy this thing, they are not cheap, because this is the original design. So let me go over, I have another video where it's poor quality, but I scanned over it. But I'm going to tell you some of the features of it and what to look for if you were to buy something like this, and all that stuff. Now, this is truly a Black Army. This is the Colt US M1911 Black Army. Now, every single one of these things that you see at a gun show, you'll see they write on there that it's a Black Army. And about 90% of them are not Black Armies. They're not in any way. This one really is. Now, what a Black Army is during the wartime, the demand was so high on these guns, and Colt was under so much pressure to produce them and get them out to the military men that needed them, that they had to start cutting a couple corners in order to be able to meet the demand of them. So what they did is they put less time into prepping them before the finish went on them, and they put this finish on them. It's called the Black Army finish. I think it was called melanite or something like that, and it was poorly prepped before they put them on there because they were trying to rush them out the door, and the finish pretty much came off of all of them. If you can find a true Black Army with any finish whatsoever on it, you've really got something special, because most of them are just bare carbon steel colored. This one, in my opinion, probably has about 60% of its finish left on it, maybe a little bit more, but for argument's sake, I'm going to say it has about 60% of its finish. If you look on the front strap, there's virtually none left on it. On the back strap, there's none left on it. That's a wear spot where you hold it in your hand. But if you look at all the slide and the muzzle and all that stuff, you got a little bit of wear right here. But pretty much, I would say this gun's got about 60% of its finish left on it, which is incredible. Now, what you look for to see if something's a true Black Army, the first and most obvious thing you're going to look at is the serial number on it. And this is a 500,000 serial number. Now, any of the Colts that were made after June of 1918 is going to place it in the Black Army range. And this was a late 1918. The other thing you're going to look for is when they started doing that, this United States property mark right here on the side of it will always be on the right side. The ones that were made prior to June would be right across the bottom of the frame right here. That's the very first sign. If that United States property, and they're a lot more common too, the ones that run right across here, if it's written right across there, it's not a Black Army. Just, that doesn't mean it's not a good gun, and if you're a value person, that doesn't mean it's not a valuable gun, but it's not a Black Army. This is a Black Army because it was made after June of 1918. Now, another thing, these guns were so mismatched and everything when they were fighting the wars and all that. I'm sure they had failures and lost parts and all that, and arsenals switching parts out while they were cleaning them and all that. So you could have a slide that didn't match the frame and all that. And once again, that doesn't make it a bad gun. This one isn't like that. A true Black Army, the Colt horse will always be right in the middle, right there. If you find one that is on the back here, that's an earlier slide. It's not a Black Army. I'll see if I can zoom in and show you some of these proof marks and all that. These are the people that signed off on it. I don't remember without looking at notes, and I don't look at notes when I do these videos, of what the actual proof marks are, who the person was signed off on them. But this gun is 100% correct. I've been over it with a fine-tooth comb. Let me see if I can get the barrel markings to show up. Switch it around right here. Everything is correct on this gun, though. So I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of experts on here that's going to tell me otherwise, but everything is 100% correct on this gun. It's been altered in no way, shape, or form. Everything is right. Now, the World War I original Colt 1911s, and the differences in the modern ones was they didn't have a scallop frame right here. It just went straight. All the modern guns now you see has like a little scalloping here, so you can slide your finger in there and get to the trigger. It gives you more room if you're shooting gloves or something. This one has a long trigger on it. If you look at this grip safety slash beaver tail, whatever you want to call it, it's virtually non-existent. So what people were complaining about, and they still complain to this day, and I don't understand because I don't have this problem. But when you're firing this gun, when it comes down while it's operating, this thing could hit your hand and give what they call hammer bite. It doesn't do that to me, but I do see where it could be a problem if you were to fire it. Now, in 1924, they made a couple revisions to this gun, and they produced what they called the A1. In common terms, people knew it as the World War II 1911. This is the World War I, and the World War II ones are more like the A1s. And that doesn't mean, it's not really a correct term, but that's what common people call them. The revisions they made, they cut out the little scallops right here. It has a shorter trigger on it. The beaver tail here extended out just a little bit to give you a little bit more protection, and the sights were a little bit better, and they finished them in parkerized finish, and it almost looks kind of like an OD green. Not like an OD green like the Gucci Glockers do, but like it has like a green tint to it. These are blued. Now, look at the sights on this thing. They are horrible. I mean, they're almost non-existent. They're very small. They're very hard to pick up on it. See if I can get you a shot of the front one. But this gun's in remarkable condition, in my opinion, for its age. This thing's over 110 years old, and it will still function just like it would when it was brand new. I haven't shot it in quite some time, and maybe one day, when I get through all the stuff that I want to go through with y'all, we'll take it out to the range and we'll shoot it. But I had a lot of questions about this. People want me to go over it and all that. Now, these guns, I'm telling you, they are very accurate still. This thing, you can ping still at 50 yards all day long with this thing. But you have to be able to pick up those small sights. And if you have something like this, it's all right to take it out, enjoy it, and shoot it. Just don't abuse it, because this steel is a little bit softer than the modern steel. And one of the things you have to be careful with if you start abusing things like this is that slide stop. You could actually ruin this slide if you start banging it around a lot, because these, the steel wasn't made to the standards that they are today. Now, the magazine, if you'll notice, it's a two-tone magazine, and these things are fake too, just like everything is counterfeited. Everybody wants to make $1 off of some unsuspecting person, and I never have understood that. This is a real one. This is a 7-round magazine. That's what they came in. And this magazine here, the reason it's two-toned is they blued the magazines, and then they heat treated them, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they dipped them in hot gasoline or something like that to heat treat the tops of them, and it burned the bluing off of them. And that's why they're two-tone. They're all inconsistent because they were all dipped at different depths and all that, but they were just trying to heat treat the top of them. But the original magazines held 7 rounds. I know the new modern ones, the new modern normal size 1911 magazines hold 8 rounds. The majority of them do to this day. Some of them are 7, but majority of them are 8. But this one's a 7-round one. I have fired it with this magazine. The spring is a little sketchy, and the follower is a little sketchy. When I do shoot it, I mean, it's been a while. I usually use Wilson Combat magazines. It's almost sacrilegious to do it, but Wilson Combat magazines always work. Some of the things about it that a modern 1911 doesn't have, it has a very small thumb safety here. It has a small slide stop. It's not a slide release, it's a slide stop. Has a small magazine release. No cutouts right here. I mentioned that already. There's no undercut right here to get a higher grip on it. There's no texturing on the front strap. It's got a lanyard loop on it. That was a military thing. If you look, the ejection port is very high. It's not flared out or anything like that. I've already mentioned it has a non-existent beaver tail on the grip safety. It doesn't have any of these new fancy skeletized hammers or triggers on it or anything. It's got a regular GI hammer on top of it. Now, one of the things you can look at if somebody's trying to rip you off at a gun show, and trust me, they try to, you can look at the grain lines on these things. The grain lines, like the marks will go side to side on top of the slide. It's very hard to pick up on camera. And then they'll go sideways on the frame and slide. It's real hard to pick up, but that's one of the ways to look, and you can see if it's been refinished or anything like that. If you see any washout marks on the roll marks, it probably means it's a refinished gun. Usually, if you're a value person, if these things have been refinished, the monetary value is not as high than if it hasn't been refinished. But this one has not been refinished, and like I said, there's probably about 60% of this finish left on it, and this is absolutely a cool gun. I do not understand the younger crowd or the uneducated crowd that thinks that this thing's not cool. This is the reason that they're able to have all these new modern semi-automatic guns. If it wasn't for this gun, none of those other ones would exist. This guy was a genius that designed this thing. Colt was a genius for marketing this thing. And it's just, I mean, Colt's got a lot of problems. They've had a lot of problems over the years, and we are one day going to go into the Colt Firearms Company. They're one of the companies that are close to my heart, but man, they had some problems. There's a few American companies that are close to my heart that's made poor decisions over time, and Colt's one of them. But anyway, this video is about this gun. This is just an awesome piece of history. It does have a little bit of rattle to it. You know, the new modern 1911s will not do this as bad if you get a good one, at least. It does have, they call it the Colt rattle. But that's just from age. But there's nothing wrong with this gun. There's nothing wrong with shooting this gun. It's got a pretty heavy trigger in 1911 standards. But it's better than any Glock trigger than you're ever going to feel. That's all the take-up there is right there. And it goes off. I would say that's probably, I don't know, 6-pound trigger, maybe a 7-pound trigger, tops. But it is very crisp and all that. If you look at it one more time, for it being this old, that's all the take-up there is on this thing. And it just goes off. And here's the reset. No Glock does that, folks. But yeah, everybody, there's two classes of people that'll look at this. Some of the younger people and stuff will look at it like it's just an old beat up gun. It's worn out. My Gucci Glock with my flashlight and laser on it, well, it's a lot better. That's incorrect. This is a piece of history. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate it a lot, and I love talking to people about it. Then you have the other crowd that's the gun dealers at the gun show. If they see you with this, they're going to want to buy it. But they're going to want to buy it for $500, and so they can sell it to somebody, and they're going to sit it on their table and tell somebody that a general had it. Every one of these things, an officer on that thing. Well, you know, I don't know who carried this one. And it really doesn't matter to me. I just know that it's a Black Army, original Colt, 1911, World War I gun that was made after June of 1918. That's what I know about it, and I know that it's one of my favorite ones, and the history on it alone is why I like it. But one day we'll take it out to the range and we'll shoot it, and I'll show you folks that it does work and it is functionable and all that. The old girl hasn't been out in a while, but she will go out one day. If you have any questions on it, I am pretty knowledgeable on these things. I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, nor did I ever claim to be an expert. But go ahead and ask, and I'd be happy to answer it if I can. If I cannot, I'll tell you I cannot answer it. Just when you see stuff like this, appreciate it, folks. It's just because it's old and beat up doesn't mean it's a piece of junk. Because this gun's by far not a piece of junk. If it was a piece of junk, it wouldn't be 110 years old and still be able to go out and fire right now. To this day, you could take this gun out right now to the range and fire. If you can see good enough to look through those sights, you can keep up with anybody on the range. But any questions, let me know. I just wanted to show it to you. And you folks have a great day, and thank you very much for watching my video.